Imagine a company that generated $34 million in total revenue in the first quarter of the year.
I mean, not a bad quarter at all.
Right. A solid mid-sized operation just kind of ticking along. But then picture that exact same company with that exact same revenue turning around and signing a single contract worth $19 billion.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Exactly. You look at those two numbers side by side on a spreadsheet, and the math just refuses to compute.
It's the kind of financial whiplash that forces you to, immediately stop what you're doing and look under the hood of the business, because a jump from 34 million to 19 billion, that isn't just growth.
No, not at all.
It is a complete metamorphosis of what a company actually is.
And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive, where we spent the last few days looking under the hood of a massive stack of documents surrounding this exact metamorphosis.
And we had quite the stack.
We really did. We dug through this dense Q1 2026 SEC 10Q filing from a company called TeraWulf Inc. And we paired that with some recent technical reporting from SiliconANGLE, plus a slew of corporate press releases.
Right.
And our mission here, by taking all these sources together, is to show you exactly how the artificial intelligence boom isn't just like a software revolution happening invisibly in the background. It is aggressively, physically reshaping American heavy industry and the entire energy grid.
Yeah, and TeraWulf serves as really the ultimate magnifying glass for this shift.
Yeah.
Because on paper, they were a vertically integrated owner and operator of digital infrastructure. But the reality in these documents shows a company moving at just breakneck speed, tearing down its own history to build something entirely unprecedented.
Breakneck is right. To grasp the sheer scale of that $19 billion deal, we first had to look at the violent pivot they made in their business model over, just 12 short months?
Yeah, just 12 months. Let's trace that timeline, because the Q1 2025 revenue numbers paint a very specific picture. A year ago, TeraWulf made $34.4 million.
Okay.
And every single penny of that revenue came from one solitary source, which was Bitcoin mining.
Wow. 100%.
Exactly. They were, by every definition, a pure crypto company.
But then fast forward 12 months to Q1 2026.
Yeah.
The total revenue figure is almost identical, right? It's $34 million.
Yeah.
But the internal machinery generating that money is entirely unrecognizable. High-performance computing, or HPC leases, have just surged to take over the vast majority of that revenue.
Right. They're sitting at $21 million.
Yeah. And the Bitcoin mining operations, their former lifeblood, plummeted to just $13 million.
So in 1 year, the core engine just completely flipped. But what jumps out from the 10Q isn't just the shifting revenue columns, it's the physical destruction required to make this happen.
Which is wild to read about. Because when a tech company pivots, we usually think of a software update or, a rebranding campaign.
Right, a new logo.
Exactly. But TeraWulf is literally bringing in heavy machinery, shutting down and ripping apart their existing Bitcoin miner buildings at their Lake Mariner campus in upstate New York.
They are gutting their own facilities just to clear floor space for AI operations. And the financial filings capture the violence of that teardown perfectly.
Yeah, the impairment charge.
Exactly. TeraWulf recorded a $25.7 million impairment charge. And when you see an impairment charge in a 10Q...
Right. What does that actually mean for the listener?
Well, it basically means a company is telling the SEC, hey, that perfectly good equipment we had on our balance sheet, its value to our future business is suddenly gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And on top of that, they took an $11.9 million hit in accelerated depreciation.
Meaning they had servers and infrastructure designed to last for years, and they are intentionally crushing that lifespan down to zero on paper just to justify getting it out of the building.
That is the cost of urgency right there. They are willing to take tens of millions of dollars in financial hits on existing functional infrastructure because the floor space it occupies is now infinitely more valuable empty.
I want to pause on the mechanics of this transition for a second. Because if I'm visualizing a data center, it's just a warehouse full of blinking computer towers.
Sure.
So why can't TeraWulf just unplug a crypto miner and plug in an AI server? Is this simply a matter of swapping out the racks, or are we talking about two entirely different industries occupying the same shell? Is it like a factory abruptly stopping the production of calculators to build smartphones overnight?
Oh, it's a completely different beast, and it's entirely due to the physics of power consumption.
Okay, how so?
Well, Bitcoin mining operates on what the energy sector calls an interruptible load.
Interrupt.
Right. So if you are mining crypto and let's say a massive heat wave hits upstate New York, stressing the local power grid and driving electricity prices through the roof, you can simply flip a switch.
You just turn it off.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You turn off the mining rigs for 3 hours, let the grid cool down, and turn them back on after dinner.
So it's essentially a flexible math problem. You can pause the calculation and pick it up later without breaking the system.
Yes, but AI workloads, specifically the training of massive foundational models, they do not allow for pauses.
Not at all.
No, they require a highly reliable, constant, quote-unquote, stand-ready obligation for power and cooling. You cannot shut down a supercomputer cluster halfway through training a multi-billion parameter neural network just because, afternoon electricity rates spike.
Because it would corrupt the training.
Exactly. The training process requires absolute uninterrupted stability. So to offer that level of reliability, you need entirely different electrical substations, industrial-grade backup systems, and a cooling apparatus that makes crypto mining look like a space heater.
Wow. That distinction changes everything. It's the difference between operating a city bus system where you can delay a route if traffic gets bad and operating a bullet train that has to run at 200 miles an hour, 24/7, without a single drop in electrical current.
That is a perfect analogy.
Which explains why TeraWulf couldn't just swap the computers out. They literally had to gut the buildings.
Right, and clearing out that old crypto gear was really merely the prelude to the main event, because they were building a nest to attract the most demanding tenants on the planet.
And that leads us to the July 2026 announcement, which is where the scale of this ambition crystallizes.
Yes.
According to the tech press and corporate releases, Anthropic, which is obviously one of the premier heavyweight developers in artificial intelligence, they signed a 20-year lease with TeraWulf.
And that is the $19 billion contract.
Right. The site for this mega deal is TeraWulf's newly named Justified Data Campus down in Hawesville, Kentucky.
And the physical footprint required to support Anthropic's lease is just hard to overstate. By early 2028, with the first phases coming online in late 2027, this Hawesville campus will accommodate 401 megawatts of critical IT load.
Over 400 megawatts. I mean, we throw these numbers around, but in the context of the American power grid, 400 megawatts is enough electricity to power hundreds of thousands of homes.
Yeah, staggering.
It's literally the footprint of a medium-sized city, dedicated entirely to running computer chips. But digging into the Silicon Angeli reporting, the most fascinating strategic move here isn't the computers at all. It's the real estate.
Absolutely.
Because TeraWulf bought this 790-acre site in February 2026. And the site itself is an abandoned aluminum smelting facility.
Yeah, a former smelter. And that smelter is basically the skeleton key to this entire $19 billion deal.
Because of the power infrastructure.
Exactly. To build a 400-megawatt AI facility, the biggest hurdle isn't buying the GPUs or pouring the concrete. The bottleneck is the power grid. A heavy industrial site like an aluminum smelter already possesses the absolute lifeblood of AI infrastructure, which is massive pre-existing power capacity.
Because, I mean, if you were to buy 700 acres of empty farmland, you can't just call the local utility and ask for 400 megawatts of power to be turned on next Tuesday.
Not at all. Getting approval for that much power from scratch involves this labyrinth of regulatory interconnection queues.
It takes years, right?
It takes years, sometimes a full decade, to secure the permits, negotiate with regulators, and physically construct the high-voltage transmission lines and the massive energized substations required to step that power down.
Wow.
So by purchasing an old smelter, TeraWulf effectively bought a time machine. They acquired direct, pre-approved access to the regional high-voltage transmission network, complete with existing industrial infrastructure and fiber optics already in the ground.
Time is the one asset these AI developers just cannot manufacture. And the financials reflect the premium of skipping that decade-long line.
Oh, they certainly do.
TeraWulf paid $200 million in cash for the site. And they also gave the seller a 6.8% minority equity stake in the development entity.
Which is huge.
Right. According to the filings, that equity stake alone was valued at over $100 million on day one.
Yeah, they paid a staggering premium, but in the AI arms race, speed to market is literally everything. A site with energized substations already built is arguably the most valuable real estate in the tech sector right now.
Okay, I follow the logic on the real estate, but I have to aggressively push back on the math here.
Sure.
Because the sources estimate that to actually construct this 400 megawatt data center for Anthropic, TeraWulf is going to need to invest roughly $3 to $4 billion in capital expenditures.
Right?
Now look back at that Q1 2026 SEC filing. TeraWulf reported a massive net loss of $427.7 million in that single quarter.
They did.
How on earth does a company losing hundreds of millions of dollars on paper finance a multi-billion-dollar construction project for Anthropic?
Okay, so the contradiction you're seeing is the gap between accounting rules and actual cash flow.
Okay, explain that.
That $427 million loss is terrifying at first glance. But if you dissect the 10Q, you realize very little of that is cash flying out the window of the corporate bank account.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the vast majority of it consists of paper losses mandated by SEC reporting standards.
Okay, break down these paper losses for us because, a loss is a loss when you're going to a bank looking for a loan.
Right. So let's look at the two biggest chunks. First, $101.4 million of that loss is purely stock-based compensation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they are aggressively paying their talent and equity, giving them shares of the company rather than draining their actual cash reserves.
That makes sense.
But the true anomaly, the biggest chunk of that deficit, is a $216.3 million loss recorded as and this is accounting jargon change, in fair value of warrant liabilities.
Warrants. Okay. I know a warrant is essentially a financial instrument, kind of like a coupon, that gives someone the right to buy stock at a specific price in the future.
Exactly.
So who is holding over $200 million worth of these coupons against TeraWulf?
Google.
Google. How did Google get involved in a Kentucky infrastructure deal?
Well, we have to look back to an August 2025 press release. To support the massive debt financing required to even begin playing at this scale, TeraWulf needed a guarantor.
A heavy hitter.
The heaviest. Google stepped in to provide a $3.2 billion backstop. In exchange for essentially throwing the weight of their own balance sheet behind TeraWulf's loans, Google received 32.5 million warrants, which gave them a 14% pro forma equity stake in the entire operation.
Wait. Walk me through the mechanics of how Google owning warrants translates into a loss for TeraWulf. Because if Google holds the right to buy TeraWulf stock at a set price, and TeraWulf's business starts blowing, the value of TeraWulf stock goes up, which makes Google's coupons incredibly valuable.
Yes. You've hit the exact accounting paradox.
Right.
Because those warrants are considered a liability on TeraWulf's balance sheet, a promise they eventually have to honor. As the value of the company increases, the quote-unquote cost of that liability also increases.
So the better TeraWulf performs in reality, the more valuable Google's warrants become. And SEC rules force TeraWulf to record that increase in value as a massive multi-hundred-million-dollar loss on their income statement.
Exactly. The irony is profound. A catastrophic paper loss in this specific line item actually signals that the market believes the company is succeeding wildly.
Okay, that solves the mystery of the balance sheet. They have Google co-signing the loans, which gives lenders confidence despite the paper losses.
Yeah.
But a backstop is just a guarantee. It isn't liquid capital. TeraWulf still needs actual physical cash to pay construction crews to build out the Hawesville site.
Which introduces the concept of capital recycling. It's an increasingly common tactic in heavy infrastructure development. To fund the Hawesville build, which TeraWulf wholly owns and controls, they decided to liquidate a different asset. They held a 50.1% stake in a joint venture facility down in Abernathy, Texas.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they sold that entire stake to their partner, FluidStack, for $450 million in pure cash.
Okay, so putting all these pieces together, TeraWulf is essentially acting like a highly skilled commercial real estate developer rather than a traditional tech company.
100%.
They secure the ultimate anchor tenant in Anthropic. They get the wealthiest relative imaginable, Google, to co-sign the ultimate multi-billion-dollar mortgage to make sure the debt clears. And to come up with the massive down payment required to break ground on their Kentucky mega project, they flip their Texas property at a premium to deploy cash elsewhere.
It is a masterclass in monetizing earlier investments to deploy cash into newer, larger platforms where they retain absolute direct ownership. They are using highly sophisticated financial engineering to feed an industry that just has an insatiable appetite for physical space and power.
Let's transition to that physical space. Because now that the financials make sense, the engineering reality of what they are actually building is It's just wild.
Oh, it really is.
We've established that a 400-megawatt AI campus is essentially a heavy industrial plant. But diving into the technical breakdown in SiliconANGLE, the biggest physical bottleneck for AI development right now, second only to electricity, is thermodynamics.
Yes. The high-density GPUs required to train large language models, the actual silicon chips doing the heavy lifting, they consume immense amounts of power, and consequently they run incredibly hot.
Right.
The heat density is so extreme that traditional data center air conditioning, which just, blows chilled air down an aisle, physically cannot remove the heat fast enough to prevent the chips from melting.
So what's the workaround?
The solution they're deploying at Hawesville sounds like something out of a chemical plant. They are implementing a massive closed-loop liquid cooling system. And the environmental mechanics here are fascinating. Historically, data centers consume millions of gallons of local water, evaporating it into the atmosphere to cool the air. But TeraWulf is recycling a specific liquid mix through miles of industrial plumbing.
Yeah, the sources say they are circulating a blend of purified water and propylene glycol directly to the server racks.
Right.
Propylene glycol, which is widely known as a common food additive. You find it in everything from coffee drinks to ice cream.
Yeah, it's utilized here for its thermal transfer properties and to prevent biological growth or freezing in the pipes. They pump this chemical cocktail through microchannels built directly onto or sitting immediately behind the heat-generating graphics cards.
Okay.
The liquid absorbs the immense thermal load, and massive industrial pumps move the near-boiling coolant outside to enormous radiator structures. The heat is dissipated into the atmosphere, and the cooled liquid loops right back into the server room.
It's just an endless high-pressure loop of industrial plumbing, managing the heat of tens of thousands of chips simultaneously. And operating a system that volatile requires a specific type of workforce, right? I mean, the Cambridge Digital Mining Industry Report included in our sources contextualizes just how massive the electrical consumption of digital assets has become.
Yeah, TeraWulf clearly recognizes that they aren't just in the business of leasing space, they are in the business of mastering electrons.
Mastering electrons, I like that.
Well, it's true. Managing hundreds of megawatts and millions of gallons of pressurized coolant isn't a job for software developers. You need electrical engineers, fluid dynamicists, and grid technicians. You need human capital that understands heavy industry.
And the 10Q highlights exactly how they are acquiring that talent. In May 2025, TeraWulf got a company called Wulf E&D for $54.6 million.
Yep.
And the explicit reason given in the filing was to bring 94 specific employees in-house, a team that possesses, quote, deep power generation expertise.
They didn't buy a product, they bought a team of power plant operators.
Right.
And they are actively acquiring the assets for those operators to run. Because the filings also detail their ongoing acquisition of the Morgantown Power Generating Station in Maryland, which is a 210-megawatt grid-connected facility.
It really forces a total reevaluation of the vocabulary we use to talk about technology.
It does.
Because for the last decade, we've talked endlessly about the cloud. And the metaphor is brilliant marketing, right? It sounds light, invisible, weightless, just floating silently above us.
Right.
But looking closely at these documents, the reality of the cloud is actually an abandoned heavy metal smelter in Kentucky, retrofitted with miles of industrial plumbing, pumping food additives through boiling server racks, powered by its own dedicated grid-connected power plants.
Operated by Rust Belt energy engineers.
Exactly. Are these AI infrastructure companies basically just becoming the new utility and power generation companies?
In many ways, yes. If you're looking at this industry and wondering why Silicon Valley suddenly cares so deeply about legacy industrial infrastructure, this is the missing puzzle piece.
Yeah.
You cannot run the future of artificial intelligence without physically owning and operating the power plants of the past. Software algorithms are no longer the bottleneck. The companies that can master concrete, copper wiring, and thermodynamics are the ones who will dictate the pace of global AI development.
The digital frontier isn't expanding into the ether. It's slamming hard into the physical limits of the natural world.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's take a breath and retrace the path we just walked today.
Sure.
We started by watching TeraWulf radically dismantle its own history-taking, brutal financial write-downs to clear away crypto miners and pivot toward the AI revolution.
Right.
We saw them leverage the decaying footprint of an old aluminum smelter to bypass a decade of regulatory gridlock. We untangled the paper losses that masked a brilliant financial strategy, backed by giants like Google and Anthropic, flipping assets in Texas to fund a $19 billion future in Kentucky.
And finally, we looked at the massive plumbing and power plants required to keep the whole thing from melting down.
Exactly. It's a master narrative of how cutting-edge technology inevitably becomes a story about heavy industry and raw energy.
It really is.
But stepping back from TeraWulf and Anthropic, there is a lingering thought here that goes far beyond a single corporate 10Q for you to think about.
Yeah.
If just one AI campus like Hawesville requires over 400 megawatts of captive power, essentially commandeering the energy footprint of an entire city just to train algorithms, what happens to the broader public energy grid?
That is the million-dollar question.
As a dozen other trillion-dollar tech giants race to build their own massive facilities simultaneously across the country, how do we reconcile this unprecedented drain on our electrical capacity with our global climate goals?
The demands of artificial intelligence are on a collision course with the limits of our public infrastructure.
It's a reality that's going to affect every time you flip a light switch in the coming decade. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the physical machinery driving the AI boom. Keep looking past the software interfaces, keep following the megawatts, and most importantly, keep questioning the world around you.